Good afternoon, everyone. Hi.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone.
Thanks, Jeevan. I'll take the panel from here. Thank you so much. Great. I think I was looking forward to the panel discussion today, and I'm sure we'll have an interesting session. And obviously, and I'm sure the audience will benefit from the discussion today. So let me just quickly start with the discussion. So I think what we've seen in the last few decades is a way of transformation in banking sector. What we have seen as a pre-digital era where it started with electronic operations, mainframe, branches, ATMs, e-cards, etc. In fact, telephonic customer services, right? I think then after that came the digital 1.0, which basically leveraged the SMAC stack, which is the social, mobile, analytics, and cloud. Basically transforming the technology itself from a monolithic enabler to provisioning banking services to connected customers. So I think we are entering into a new phase of technology, obviously.
So we lost him. Is anyone else able to hear him?
No, not me.
No, looks like we lost him.
Yeah,
He will connect it.
yeah, we lost him. Yes.
I think while we are waiting for Harnath, do you guys think that we go through some of the discussions that we've had? And Aruna, do you want to start off with the topic that you want to talk about? Or do you guys think we should wait for Harnath a little more?
Yeah, I could get started if you would like. We have been talking about the transformations of banks, and I guess the first thing that Harnath wanted to ask me was about how I see the banks of the future, and what's going to be the change in this. So I think before I respond, I'd like to just start off by quoting Mr. Uday Kotak, because in a recent interaction with the media, Mr. Kotak said that his science fiction view of banking for the future was that there are going to be no barriers or minimal barriers between technology and financial services. So that's one part of it. And the second, he said that the banks of the future are going to have to work with 1/4 of the cost models that we have today. So that's the picture that he painted for us some time ago. And my view is, I think that has already started to play out. We've seen so many technology startups who have started to offer financial services, payments, microfinancing. We've already seen that. And if you look at the banks, there are so many banks who have already started to offer lifestyle products. The Kotak mobile app is also an ideal, lifestyle kind of product. You can do, of course, your banking transactions on it, but a lot of e-commerce capability exists. You can go in and do your shopping on Flipkart. You can book your travel tickets with IBIBO, etc. Go IBIBO, sorry, etc. on it as well. And basically now banks have got multi-skilled teams to be able to conceptualize, design, and implement products, across the board, both banking products as well as lifestyle products. So there are people who understand consumer behavior, customer expectations, etc. And you also, of course, have the technologists who understand the whole array of new technologies that we have today to be able to leverage the technologies in order to be able to provide these kind of products. So I think that's the way we see the future. I'll just give you one example of that. Until now, banks have already started to offer self-service on their digital channels, net banking, mobile banking. Yeah. But more recently with the pandemic, there's been an even greater need to ensure that every transaction that can happen in the branch can also be done on a digital channel. So self-service is becoming central to everything. But there's a very interesting angle to this, because the people who are now coming on digital channels are people who previously preferred to walk down to their local branches to do their transactions. But now they're coming on digital channels, and they're actually not very comfortable with technologies. So banks now have to use technology to make them comfortable, right? I mean, if you have an expert in net banking, he'll come in, he can see a screen, busy screen with all the different options, and he can choose what he wants to do today, purchase a mutual fund, send some money, etc., and log out. But if you have a novice, when he logs in, he wants to see a very simple screen with just 1 or 2 transactions that he kind of wants to perform. So we need a lot of personalization. Similarly, if he gets stuck, you need a chatbot to help him go through it. Or perhaps for the elderly, you want to give him verbal instructions, so voice bots. So I see all of these new technologies being leveraged to improve the experience. And of course, with the self-service being one of the big aspects. I actually just want to take 2 more minutes to address the second point that Mr. Kotak made about working with a quarter of the cost models. And I think, you know, that's become obvious because you have this explosion of technologies that we all have to deal with now. And we have aspirations to be able to use it. But given the kind of growth that banks are seeing in financial institutions and the economy in general, we expect that technology budgets will be muted. We should not expect to see big growth of it. So how do you balance these opposing forces of, you know, increased technology innovation and at the same time, you know, managed technology budgets? And the answer is, of course, the third variable in this triangle, which is all the money that we're pouring into what I call run the bank, to keep all the systems in the data centers and the applications running and going. I think we are going to see razor-sharp focus on managing those expenses. Things like, you know, self-healing systems for IT operations to improve their productivity. Similarly, productivity improvements in the business operations areas through document processing, NLP for documents, RPA, etc., etc. So I see a lot of focus on operational improvements for productivity improvements to manage the costs on one side, and innovation on the customer side with all of the new technologies to improve experience. So I think that's where I see banking going in the future.
I think if I may add few points to that, am I audible, team?
Yes, we are.
Yes,
yeah, so I'm Ruwan. I'm actually from Sri Lanka, right? So just to give a different context to from Sri Lanka.
Call them, Ra.
Right. So basically, I think it's a very valid point what you made on your initial discussion. The current scenario where the world is facing has actually changed many things in our lives, right? So we as individuals, most of the things have been changed, right? So our lifestyle have changed greatly. Along with that, if you take banking and financial services out for a moment, most of the other industries have actually moved on with the digital way of presenting their services, right? So in that way, I think it's a great opportunity how financial services organizations, especially banks, how they can offer their services to their customers. I think this is a good thing if you really look at it in a way to open out, you know, how you really digitalize and provide services to our customers. So Sri Lanka being a very small country compared to our neighbor India, we have only 21 million population and almost, I think, fair amount of almost 90% or more, I think we are on banking. So I think this started a big different dimension to our country. I will speak about few things that we started. in the course of this presentation. Over to you. Anyone is?
Yeah. Sarath, I think you're saying something. We can't hear you.
Sorry. Yeah, actually, I was wanting to hand the baton to Mr. Wasi.
Yeah.
I wanted to understand, Mr. Wasi, in the context of the current technology and regulatory changes and the context that we're all in, how are you guys handling traditional models versus the new models? And what are some of the key initiatives that you are taking in the context of these changing trends? Do you want to talk about them?
This is Wasi Noman from I'm from Bangladesh Brac Bank. So if we look at the context, that is, we have changed a lot, and in the recent COVID-19, actually we have that pushed us really to see the things differently and to do the things differently, and even from the customers who are actually doing all the things in some way, and also trying to adapt as the banks or the financial institutions are running. But the thing is, actually, they are also thinking of differently, right? So now, actually, if we talk about the customers, they need the things to be in a faster way, right? Faster way means not only just wait for 2 or 3 days. If we see that now account opening is we were doing for 2 or 3 days, that was taking 7 days, and then your KYC is you need to do it manually, but and you have done a lot of improvements. We naturally do the improvements, right? In shifting processes. But the thing is, now actually the time has came, and the customer is looking at when we are looking at the ecosystems of the fintechs and other things. Now actually all the things needs to be done in a straight-through processes. There is no alternatives, right? And when we are thinking the straight-through processes, that means lot of the dots in these processes, triggering from the request from the customer side and executing that. So that should be very instantaneously. And when we have started the journey, if we look at the banking is a very regulated environment, and when we are very cautious about the controls, and that is natural, because for doing that, that is the trust part associated with the banks, with any type of customers, and that anyway we will have to do it. But there are certain means over the times we have done, and we have incorporated many steps, knowingly or unknowingly, such as for if we do an account opening, we are sure that in the back office operations and processes, we are doing many Excel-based tasks. And we are also doing some checking in the regulatory environment, such as for CIB or account verification, CBB, that is done manually. So from a customer perspective, if we look at the customer perspective, so customers wants everything on a straight-through processes. But so ultimately the main thing when we are talking about the technology is really supported by the processes. So first thing we will have to do, so that is changing, re-engineering the processes, and seeing that what actually we have incorporated over the times, what has been redundant. So re-engineering the processes is very important to make the dots together to load it upon. And regulatory perspectives, I also see that regulation is really trying to control the banks so that we are in a safe manner serving our customers. We can keep safe of our customers' money. But at the same time, we see that there are many ways. We can do the things that is such as in Bangladesh context. I can see that we have recently incorporated the electronic KYC verifications. In India, that is the Aadhaar card or that type of thing. So that means the changing of the ecosystem not only done, but also at the same time there are regulatory things are also coming into the pictures to do all the things digitally. But my perspective is just only not doing the digitally with the existing processes doesn't serve the purpose. We will have to really look into the processes and re-engineering the processes of what we are doing on a day-to-day basis, and the reshape, and then do your automation. Otherwise, actually doing something with the legacy processes might it will create a bottleneck. Because also another things we will have to see that we are talking about now at the economy of the scales. So the financial inclusion, especially in this region, I'm not sure the other was, but in Bangladesh, the financial inclusion is not much. So when we are thinking of the when we are thinking of the digitalization, so we about also think the parts that are not about the financial inclusions, that through the digital channels, to the mobile apps, to the internet bankings, and all other things, so that they can easily also do the customers can get their services very easily, and then through the re-engineered process that can be served faster. The another thing actually I like to mention before I leave it. So I think the openness of the services has came to the pictures in these days, and I am very sure so that the customers will not be able to differentiate about where they are getting the services from, be it from bank, or be it from another insurance companies, or be it from utility companies. But the service is, though it's a banking service, such as payment or other things, but the trigger points can be somewhere else. So that means actually the third parties will come into the picture. So we'll have to think about the services to be very much open, so that can be consumable by the third parties. And this is the advantage of that. The customer is getting associated with us, so they can get that benefited from anywhere and anytime. So that's the most important thing.
Thanks, Mr. Wasi. I think there have been some interesting discussions. I think thanks, Aruna, for bringing the perspective around customers, the need for efficiency, and also the need to ensure that we run our systems safe and efficiently. I think I'll go next. I think my this thing is that I'm a technologist. I have predominantly been an internet guy for a long time in my career. Over the last 3 years, I've been the CIO for Airtel Payments Bank, and I believe that it's an interesting space we are in. As banking industry, we are going through a huge transition where customers need a lot of banking services and at the ease of their own phone. I mean, with the kind of penetration that we're seeing of mobile phones and mobile data, the expectation is that we serve all our customers just through the small device in their hands. And that is a big opportunity. And it's also an area that all of us need to be concerned about and be careful about. I think I will align with and repeat what Aruna talked about. Being able to build the trust of customers, ensuring that we deliver services with the same kind of trust that somebody had when walking down to a branch. I mean, that's how the banking model always was, that you walk down to a bank branch where you had a personal relationship with the manager, because that manager understood who I am as a customer. I think with technology, that's the next big problem we have to solve. We're in the path of it, but we need to solve that. Understand each customer at their individual level. Understand who the customer is, what the customer needs are, when is the customer needing that particular thing most, and what is the channel the customer is most ready to accept that service from. I think that is a big problem in my mind, that if we solve, we can become, like Aruna mentioned, the lifestyle app for any customer. And I think that is where we are all going. Think about Google's and Amazon's and others, they're building lifestyle apps. But banks also are in that path. With the trust that we have, it is an amazing opportunity for us. I think a key is also about simplifying the technology and the delivery channels, and ensuring that the technology adoption with safety is something that we need to be very careful about. I think that is something that can make or break our trust of our customers. And hence, ensuring the right security protocols, ensuring the regulatory protocols that will enable us to keep our customers' safety upfront. And that, I think, Mr. Ruwan and Mr. Wasi also called out, that from a regulatory perspective, the regulators' need is to ensure that customers are not dissatisfied, and they don't go through a lot of dissat because of the bank operations. And being able to build systems with trust is something that is very, very critical. I believe we have used some of these technologies in our own bank, but I think as an industry, we are all going through that, right? Being able to build artificial intelligence models that create customer scores, that create transaction scores, which ensure that frauds are at a minimum. Data sharing with parties, third parties, with explicit customer consent, ensuring that customer consent is managed properly. And obviously, if we need to understand a customer at an individual, a lot of machine learning capabilities and being able to manage data pipeline. I think this, for us, as an architecture, we have adopted something that we call event-driven systems, where any event that happens in the customer's life on our platforms, we actually process that as an event-driven system, so that in near real time, as soon as I do a transaction, there's a whole 360-degree view of me as a customer that is enhanced, of the merchant that is enhanced, so that within a few milliseconds of the transaction, I can now start giving offers, or I can give rewards, I can give communications, and a lot of stuff around that. And I think that is something that we will, as banks, adopt very, very aggressively. I've seen that in companies in my past, like Google and Amazon. I think banking industry is ripe in adopting those kind of architectures, which are near real time. I do see a lot of core banking solutions using batch processing and all, but I think that those days are very, very numbered, and we will see near real time systems. I'm very excited about a lot of this, and I think these are key delivery aspects that as technology teams we are looking at. Thank you.
Can I,
Mr.
Can I just get in here, Mr. Sarath and Mr. Aruna? I think you segued this perfectly for me. I couldn't have asked for a better segue. Okay. You talked about customer being approached through the digital channel. You talked about trust now being done in a very, very faceless manner, right? Or some sort of not face-to-face kind of stuff. How do you get that same level of trust going when everything is happening digitally, right? Number one. Number two, the person on the other side, right, from your organization perspective, even that is no longer sitting confined to that secured offices or data center, right? He is also ripped apart and working from home, right, to a certain extent, right? So on the other hand, that also has certain level of element of exposure attached to it. Now add third element to that, which is all the applications and data, whatever that they're interacting it is again sitting somewhere, right? No longer confined to that one single data center, confined to all those security protocols which are so finely attached, right? So you're just compounding this problem 3 times over, while on one hand you want to drive all the kind of right digital transformation going, right? So from that perspective, I think, and probably that's where I would probably lay down my law of land is look at 3 methods: authentication. You define who you are, both sides of the story. Authorization, which means you're only subjected or expected to take control or get access to those set of things which you should be. And accountability, right? Auditing and stuff, right? So I would just kind of break it down, and any choice of vendors or platform, it's no longer a vendor comparison story. It's all about any platform which can build this up end to end across the insiders, across the customers, and across the cloud. I think that's where we should probably look at. So thank you for segueing this for me.
So I hope you can see. I think it's been quite a challenge for me to get on the technology. Okay, maybe that could be a network issue or something like that. But I missed most of the session, I suppose. But thank you, Sarath, for kind of holding on to it while I was away, and I thank most of you guys for kind of picking it up. So shall we start the discussion, or we covered most of the points?
We covered most of the points, Harnath, that we talked about. There's some pending, but I think we can have Mr. Padmabhushan talk about some of these. I think we did talk about what is the technology landscape, where is it going, what is the regulatory aspects of things. I think it'd be good for Mr. Padmabhushan to talk about what he feels are the security challenges as data is increasing, the amount of data we're managing with the next gen technologies is so huge. What are the security challenges that he is seeing? What are the regulatory models that his bank is working on? I think that's one area that would be good for us to hear from him.
Sure. Yeah. So good afternoon to all. So my video is frozen. I don't know if you're able to see me or not. But at
no,
least
we're
I can
able to
hear
see
everyone. Okay, fair enough. So I think so before going to that, says information security or the regulatory aspects. Okay, and a few things I think so Aruna and others have mentioned on the the next wave or the next thing in banking where we could see ourselves. So I think so somebody mentioned about 3 A's just now, and so before we started this question. So like we have in the financial world, the AAA ratings, right, for the financial instruments or the organizations. So I think so one area where the banking could also say look forward is the 3 A's. And by 3 A's, I mean number one, the first A is your advanced analytics. Second A is your augmented reality. And third A is your artificial intelligence. So if we have these three laid out as a target for, say, the banking system, then I think that we are in a good position to have those kind of, let's say, customer experiences, which are, I would say, loosely coupled at the architecture level, but tightly coupled on the customer, say, events, whatever you say, events or experiences or his customer delight. So taking from there, okay, so what it means to have this 3A is we should have something like, as somebody is already mentioning, taking a 360-degree view of the customer. So one thing that strikes me is we have to be where the customer is. Okay, so we there are many talks going on, and even all the banks are actually thinking of having say apps, okay, where it is going beyond banking, right? So we have banking plus lifestyle, banking plus other needs, okay, and banking plus payments. I think so. We are just awaiting one more shift in this. Would be something like, say, we have say banking. If I take one example of, say, doing a payment or a fund transfer or a payment to utility bill, it should be as second nature in my, say, mobile app as, or a mobile phone rather, as I make a call. So something like, say, an app-less banking. So in my phone, where against a contact, I see today many options, be it, say, iOS or Android, where I have, say, I can message him to WhatsApp, I can text him to normal SMS. There could be one more option available to pay him. And for that, I think so already many banks and open banking are having those APIs ready. It's just a matter of time where this, say, the open source forums or the closed group people like iOS allow this, say, banking systems to actually piggyback on that OS or the kernels to have these kind of services where it would be more like an app-less banking. So that is one area. Another is, say, analytics. Instead of, say, as I said earlier, instead of bringing the customer to our, say, app, if we can be where the customer is, take cues from his journey, okay, the hints that a customer leaves in his entire digital journey, be it banking, be it non-banking, okay, maybe he's interacting on social media, he's interacting through, say, any, say, e-tailing sites. We can take cues from them, mine that data, have, say, real-time decision making using AI. Okay, as simple as, say, if we have the data for because typically banks have larger, say, CLTVs. Okay, but of late, how much of that customer lifetime is the bank able to say materialize? That is a big question, because many of the consumer tech companies are taking away the share. The simple example is Google Pay. So with that context, okay, say if we have the data of the customer that he makes typically the bill payments on a certain day of a month, we can just go ahead with a simple check of putting reminders to him. Okay, would you like to have that payment again done on so and so date, and make it as seamless as possible. Okay, something like, say, we are having today, say, UPIs, okay, or fingerprint based payments. Okay, we can also have, say, frictionless payment in terms of your facial recognitions, okay, or voice commands, which are already it's picking up. So that's on the customer journey side of things. uh, Another say area on, say, I think Aruna was mentioning about the cost part, okay, the technology piece to keep the lights on as well as do the innovation piece. Now, I heard this in some different forums also, and many people are talking about cost. But one thing we should actually try to acknowledge and understand is for keeping the lights on, maybe there is a return on technology investment that we need to look into. Okay, and how we can optimize using those self-healing technologies or automating or putting robots in place. But something like, say, putting an investment for innovation is like actually having tables and chairs in the office. So we should compare it that cost with actually putting the commodities in our say branches or offices. So if we have that kind of a thinking and we adopt that fail say fast kind of approach, I think so we should be in a better position to roll out new initiatives on say innovation piece. Coming back to the question, okay, which was asked, okay, in terms of regulatory or security say controls that IDBI is working on. So with regards to information security, say we also have the traditional say security operations center or the network operations center. All the monitoring and things are done, and we are in the process of getting say the next generation cyber SOCs of the world. And currently we are in the say implementation, early stages of implementation, where we have various say technologies, namely the 5 technologies like say your network behavior and all detectors, your source, your threat intelligence platform. So all this not only say just to cover the area where we are not typically relying on the logs and the signatures and things like that, but also taking care of the user's behavior. Okay, his digital behavior, maybe his user. When I say user, it is both employee as well as customer. Okay. So that is something we are working on the SOC, in addition to the typical, say, anti-rogue, anti-phishing, and all those services that we typically get from all the various service providers and work with the OEMs. Regarding, say, regulatory, which comprises both of, say, information security as well as the fraud element of it. So here we have a rolled out and enterprise-wide fraud risk management system, so which works on analytics as well as machine learning. And today, as I speak, this system is working on all our digital channels, both say physical as well as digital, and it is tracking. Say it is currently it is in learning mode, where it is tracking all the users' behavior and say advising the customer. It's just a matter of time, as typically the machine learning takes some time to learn based on the data available. It will be actually going into the full-fledged blocking mode, where we will be able to actually prevent the frauds on the customer per se. In addition to say this kind of a fraud system that we have, and coupled with other services we typically take from the payment providers, the bank, like say IDBI Bank, is also working on having say the next level of say technologies, okay, in terms of say cloud, where we can use certain service from the cloud for gathering the intelligence which is say learned by various experts in the industry, something like the visas of the world or the mastercards of the world, to know, okay, typical the regions, geographies from where say typical anomalies can appear. So that is on the fraud and the regulatory side. One last thing on the regulatory is we also have a system, and which is in continuous improvement mode, where the regulatory compliance is considered not simply as a compliance, but it is actually part of the business. What I mean to say here is, when we are doing the business, compliance is one of the important elements of doing the business. So we try not to say bypass any process or cut corners, but then compliance is ingrained, like we say in the information security world, like the DevSecOps or DevOps, where security is ingrained in the development. Likewise, compliance is also ingrained in the entire product creation, product lifecycle management. So that's the principle we are going by. Yeah, that's it from my side, please.
Okay,
Harnath, all yours.
Yeah. So I'll just add in just a single point. Yeah. Thank you, Harnath. Just a small point, actually, to take up from where Mr. Motiwala and Sarath, left off on the area of trust and security. It's very interesting they brought this up. I just wanted to, it reminded me that the latest buzzword in the infosec area, cybersecurity area, is zero trust architecture, right? Which nothing new. I can see everybody nodding. We are all familiar with it. I don't think this is a very new idea, and there isn't even a new technology to plunk down, right? It's not about putting in EDR or Yuba or anything. But the more I learn and understand it, I think it's a good holistic approach to adopt at the point of every implementation. And I like your 3 A's, Mr. Motiwala, where you say, authenticate. And then I always said on a need to know basis, which you say, I call it need to know and you call it authorize, and then monitor, which is of course the audit. So if we just keep that in mind, every time we approach every customer login, every device talking to another device, every process talking to another process, we have to keep that mindset now. I think it's more about ensuring we think of it in that way. It's not something that, we can just go in and switch on and say, okay, now I've done zero trust. But I think that's a good concept and a framework for us to keep in mind, where trust is most important. We have to ensure that our technologies have a zero trust, or not willing to trust any user logging in, any device talking to another, any process talking to another, until we have really authenticated and confirmed that they indeed have access over there. So
I actually talked to my team of it as, no, I mean, when we say trust, we're talking about customers trusting us, and customers will trust us when we are sort of distrustful of our own systems and ensuring that our systems always are built in the way that it really validates everything that's happening in the system. And I think that is extremely critical. Also, it is about trust and verify. While we build systems with the right processes, ensuring that the basics, I mean, 3A is basic, this thing about security. You have to authenticate a person. You have to authorize what they have access to, what are they accessing. And we need to keep ensuring that audit is happening. I mean, after all, we always work in the level of this first line of control, second line of defense, and third line of defense. We cannot ignore that. And I think these are what will build the customer trust in our systems.
I've always been a little concerned that when we talk about InfoSec, it's about plunking down a new technology. And in any bank, today you will find lots of different technologies, each of them focused in one area. But is there a holistic view of how these things interact to catch, something that might slip between the cracks is really what we need to look at.
Absolutely. Yeah, 360-degree view of everything. I mean, customer 360 or data 360. I think that's the key.
Yeah, so if I may pitch in for a minute, I think on our topic of basically enabling the technologies for the new wave of banking, I think with the current COVID situation that is in the world, I think all banks as well as the regulators have a role to play. In that point, I just like to highlight few things that we are doing from Sri Lanka standpoint. From our regulators, Central Bank of Sri Lanka, they are driving many technology-related initiatives to support the current situation in order to onboard more customers into digitally transact instead of more on the traditional transactional way. Couple of things are, we are basically pushing a lot of QR-based payments. I believe this is quite normal in India, but relatively new to Sri Lanka and a very low usage at this point of time. But the point that I'm trying to say, from a government itself, from the central bank itself, they are pushing hard as a national initiative to push banks and the customers and of course the merchants to transact in using QR codes. Number two, we are also working on blockchain kind of technologies to see how interbanks can exchange the KYCs so that the onboarding processes will be much more faster and it will give a convenience to the customer. Number three, of course, the interpayments between banks. There are multiple discussions that are currently going on, how we can make the life easier from a customer standpoint. Most of our revenue to the country comes also from labor which work outside Sri Lanka. So the remittances are coming to Sri Lanka from various ways. How can this remittance actually go to the hands of their loved ones in Sri Lanka, and how they can actually make use of it? So those are some of the few things that from the national level that we are driving. On the other hand, the banks, I have seen significant amount of digital initiatives. They have started multiple initiatives in terms of wallets, in terms of payments, in terms of customer onboarding, etc. I think the key point is about identifying your customers. Each bank will have their segment of customers. I represent the largest bank in the country, the Bank of Ceylon. So our customer base is different to some of the other banks. So, and we need to find out what's our customer need, and to give them that services which are easy for them to immediately get on board in digitally in the current situation. So that this is an opportunity for us to kind of bring on our customers onto digital environment. So that's kind of things that we are working on as well. Of course, from a bank side, the customer 360, I think one of the panelists discussed about the importance of a 360 is utmost important at this point of time, because we are also deviating in some way of that interpersonal relationship with the customer. Whereas a traditional banking will have a relationship manager or a branch that they visit or a person that they speak to. Instead, there will be a technology which is taking place in between this. So you need to have a very good customer 360, a CRM kind of a solutioning, which needs to help and to identify customers. And of course, from a technology standpoint, I think the earlier, maybe a year or two before, we were struggling as technology specialists to kind of drive RPAs to bots to etc. to our business people to bring their value. But I think now it's much more easier to tell them about the automations and things, and how things can be more enhanced. I think those are my kind of points at this point.
So I just to add one point, that is, so when we are thinking about the ecosystem, actually bank cannot work alone. So such as for every kind of authorization, such as for if I open a company account, so that means I will have to check the registration processes, whether they have a valid registration. If I open just a retail account, that means actually I shall have to check whether he is a valid citizen or that kind of thing, so whether this matches other national ID verifications. So that means, so though actually some parts are going very fast in terms of connectivity and digitalization, mobile apps, but the thing is, so unless we cannot serve, until unless the total ecosystem is not integrated together, such as for this verification, validation, and the KYC verification and the registration verification doesn't work together. So this actually the dots, again I am saying the dots actually. So when we are saying the customer life cycle, and in some parts actually we will have to wait for that kind of manual type of things. So though we see that some of the data, that's the validation processes that actually residing in the national level, at the regulatory level. So though they are coming up, but it's not coming up at a speed so that we cannot really come up with the customers or the expectations, the journey and the digitalization things that we are going on. So that is one of the most significant factors. And recently, I will say that again, the one type of account opening processes we have done so far, that is such as for 10,000 rupees, right? 10,000 rupees, he can. The customer can do the transactions with a minimum type of verifications. But again, so at the good number of people actually, which is the upper segments, that for them actually they have to wait to getting type of any kind of onboarding services. So this is very much important. So to keep the regulatory also coming up and the integration with the systems. Otherwise, actually, the total processes that we are thinking of to serve the customers better, efficiently, but and also the authenticated way, the trusted way, that might be hampered. Though we are, that is one of the main important criteria when we are thinking of serving the banking services.
Thanks, Wasi, on that. I think, sorry, I had a button because of the time as well. But one quick point I had, and maybe Sarath, you may want to just quickly pick up the point, is, I think so far, and the discussion that we've had so far is the banks which had maintained a dominant position are now being challenged by new competitors, right? And likes of, let's say, Airtel Bank, and it's a completely new generation banking, and what we call as the neo bank, right? How do you really see this as a competition, or are they complementing each other? What's your view on?
So I do believe that the opportunity is very large. That's one. And I think the need for neobanks or new banks like Payments Bank and others are because the gap has taken a long time to fill. But the reality is now that every bank has to adopt technology, has to adopt delivery channels which are with the customer. I think Mr. Ruwan also mentioned, we have to go where the customer is. The best way to go is through mobiles. And it is imperative that even conventional banks start adopting these technologies. I mean, some of the biggest Indian banks have products that are running on mobile, which are very, very well adopted. So it is imperative that this has to happen. The technology innovation is also necessary because if you want to deliver, like a Google or an Amazon is delivering to millions of customers on a daily basis. And as a bank, let's say Airtel Payment Bank also has a few million customers reaching the bank channels every day. We have to adopt similar technologies. We have to adopt a new way of design and customer experience. And that's mandatory. You cannot ignore it and say we will be a bank with a different perspective and not run in this competitive landscape. So there are fintechs which are looking for for serving customers. There are new technology companies like the Googles and others who also want to increase the bandwidth of services that they're delivering and become lifestyle applications, right? In Yahoo, for example, we used to call it the toothbrush habit. Can we, as an app, become a toothbrush habit? And that is what each one of us as banks have to start looking for. And I think Aruna called it out, I called it out, Mr. Wasi called it out. That is mandatory that we have to be doing that. And hence, the neobanks and others are apt in the technology this thing. They are absolutely collaborations that can happen. For example, as a payment bank, I cannot lend, but I can work with any other lending product manufacturer and ensure that I can distribute them on top of my reach. I think those kind of collaborations will definitely open up. Open banking, for example, in the Europe is all about this, right? Enabling the bank to have their core strengths and enabling people who have better experience and internet delivery channels to be able to leverage the banks, and eventually the customer wins. We're going in that direction. I think it's the collaboration is always, whenever there is competition, there is collaboration in the incumbents that will happen. So I think it's part of life.
I think, Sarath, you're right. I think it's about collaboration. And again, I think in my view, banks have to become more of smart aggregators, right? Instead of trying to build up the whole service grounds up.
Absolutely.
I think it's important to kind of look at all the capabilities that are available across and kind of evolve itself, right, along with the rest of the.
Yeah. For example, we look at ourselves as a platform company. We don't say it is only our services. We're a platform company. We have our services that we'll manufacture and deliver, but there are a lot of partners that we are more than open to work with who can provide their niche services and leverage our platform and serve our customers.
Sure. I know we are running out of time, and we've already and apologies from my side. I think because of some technical glitch, I couldn't be part of the overall discussion. But certainly, I think I'm sure the audience would have really had good time listening to your views on how banking is being transformed in the current scheme of things. So few takeaways based on whatever I've kind of heard your views. And I think as you said, Sarath, I think banks have to be more of smart aggregators to look at the capabilities across the banking ecosystem. Second is banks will also have to look at being intelligent processors of data. It's about combining the big data with the big data. Big data is more around ethnographic as well as the human behavior data, right? To customer intelligence. I think it's important to go close to the customers. Otherwise, you don't really understand the pulse of the customer. The third thing that I could gather was the banks will have to be, I'm sure they are more pressured today from moving out of on-premise to the cloud and possibly move to software as a service kind of models, is to make sure that the total cost of ownership with the competition that banks are seeing from being one of the big organizations. I think with the new age the banks coming in, I think they have to really relook at the model of delivery and operations. I think that's another thing which is very clear. And the fourth point, obviously, is the information security. I think, irrespective of whichever domain you're talking about, be it banking, be it insurance, be it any other domain, I think that becomes one of the key, I would say, point of consideration, right? Primarily around during the current times, as people are moving towards, with COVID-19, things have changed a lot, right? I think the mindset also obviously has changed in terms of the consumption of banking services or any other service. I think it's important to stay secure. So with that, I would want to thank the panel and sharing your views. Again, apologies from my side for not able to participate fully, but thank you so much, Sarath, for carrying this the discussion, and thank you all of you for actively